news is really a very complex business. It isn't as easy as it may look when someone is watching a news bulletin. Firstly, there is an editorial team in any news channel that tracks current affairs, decides in an edit meeting on a daily basis what are the stories it really wants to focus on. Then, of course, are the reporters on the ground in various centers across the country that track the news from their cities, from their towns, and send it back to their main offices wherever they may be located. The reporters go out with a camera person on the ground that is stationed with them most of the time in most bureaus, and they go and cover and shoot their stories. They take the shots of wherever they're going and what they're shooting. For example, if it's a live demonstration, they shoot the rally or the protest, or they interview people of interest to their stories, and then they uplink it back to their main office. Today, of course, it has become a much simpler process. From DSNG machines that were only stationed in certain centers, today you have live view units or OBs that can move with the reporter. That footage is then looked at by the input team. The editor in channels then sit and sift through the visuals. The reporters meanwhile also send a script, and they write a full script to the visuals, and otherwise they transcribe their interviews and send it for the news input and output team. Input is really the team of a news channel that tracks events. It decides where we will deploy our resources, where the reporters will go, and it coordinates with the editorial team on what are the real events that are coming up and how the resources will be spread to get what we really want and the news that one wants to focus on. Output is the arm of a news channel which then produces that news that has been sent by the reporter or has been produced by the desk, where the scripts are sometimes written, the visuals are cut, and of course it is then produced to go on air. Of course, the only element that viewers see really is the graphics, for example, which has a separate team. What you see running on the scroll on a TV channel, or in a half graphics on the screen, or the top band as we call it, and the anchor who's of course bringing and presenting the news to the viewers. It used to be very, very structured in the old days. There is of course a teleprompter that used to be in front of the anchor most of the time. Everything used to be scripted and it used to be presented as is. Today, of course, the game has changed with a lot of live coverage, breaking news happening all the time. The teleprompter has been thrown out of the window virtually, and a lot of impromptu anchoring is taking place today. There has to be, though, a great synergy between the top editorial team, who are experienced editors who decide how a news should be presented, which news should be focused on, who should be brought in on the channel to talk more about that news, and also decide who should go out and divide the workload. The input then tracks that with the reporters. There is also a team of stringers that any channel will employ. These are not on the payroll of the channel but are on contract. Stringers are local reporters where a news channel may not have their own reporters or presence, but they send in news which is really highly localized news that they send in to various channels, and the channels then pick it up. And then of course there has to be synergy between the input and the output team. They usually sit together in a newsroom along with anchors and editors, and they discuss the most important news that they want to focus on. Then of course our news agencies, for example ANI, which is one of the biggest news agencies in the country. They are independent run news agencies whose content is then subscribed to by news channels for coverage that they might not be able to get on their own. It's a very, very expensive and competitive business, and therefore you cannot have your team everywhere, especially in a large country like India. You cannot have your own team, your own reporter, your own camera everywhere. So news agencies fill in that gap for most news channels. We pick up certain interviews, bites, sound bites as we call them, also visuals and updates from news agencies all the time.